All right, welcome to Guns and Ammo's Buzz podcast. I'm here today with Jason Burton, coming from the Heirloom Precision World Headquarters in Arizona. Jason's
World headquarters indeed.
That's right. Jason's one of the best 1911 builders out there. If you're familiar with the 1911 or handguns in general, his name is needs no introduction. But 1911 builder, competitive shooter, instructor, author. Got one of the
yeah.
Vicker's guides behind me.
Yeah.
So just a great guy. We got to know each other, met years ago, and got to know one another better more recently when I took a class taught by Jason and Rob Latham. But welcome and thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I appreciate the invite. I appreciate being able to come here and talk about God's gun.
Yeah. So let's start at the beginning. Where did you grow up?
Tacoma, Washington.
Okay.
Yeah. Just outside Tacoma.
So how does a kid outside Tacoma, Washington, we won't jump too far ahead, but how'd you get into shooting?
I grew up in a house with guns, so I was lucky there, right? My dad was a gun guy, and from a very early age, I was given a gun. I think when I was 4 years old, I got my first rifle, which is pretty cool, right? I got a single shot 22 Winchester. I think that's a lot of kids' first rifles. And shooting was just a thing we did. I would say that not necessarily to the level that I do it now, in the sense of my dad wasn't a competitive shooter. He certainly didn't have the array of guns that I do, but he was a gun guy, liked Sharps rifles, liked single action armies, of course, liked the 1911 from his time in the military, his experience with it. And I just was fortunate to be brought up in a house where guns were encouraged and guns were around, and we got to shoot them.
Was it a situation where you could shoot kind of close to home, or did you have to go to a range? Was it
So my parents they didn't have like a gigantic piece of property, but they had enough property where if we wanted to, we could shoot on it, but we really didn't, only because there was houses in proximity that were just a little bit too close.
Okay.
We wouldn't go to a range per se. I was member of a range later on, like in my early 20s when I was still there. But my dad was like let's go out in the boonies. Let's go find, an empty road and drive to a place or a gravel pit or something like that where nobody else was around. And that is where we would shoot guns.
Yeah, that's how I grew up. A canal bank, some rural place, until we finally got chased away from enough of those places that we had to join a range. And I'm still a member there 40 years later or whatever. So I know you were in another business at one point.
Mm-hmm.
At some point you become obsessed with the 1911.
Oh, yeah.
How does that happen, and sort of when in life is that?
I got my first 1911, I think, when I was 19 years old. Right. So we always had one. There was always one at the house. I had an experience with one. My dad was into the military end of it. There was really I didn't even really know custom guns existed in the manner that they did when I was, in my late teens. But 19 years old, I bought a Colt 1991 A1, stainless steel gun with a big tall script on the side.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, man, this gun is really cool. And why was it cool? It was cool because you carried it with a hammer back, and that's dangerous. And, like every 19-year-old kid's into danger. So, how could I not be attracted to it? Right. And then I turned 21 and I got my concealed pistol license right away in Washington State. I mean, like the day after I turned 21, I went out and filled the form and got my license and all that. And there was a little bit of me trying to find my way into, well, what gun do I like to carry? So I tried a bunch of other things. And eventually, years later, after moving through like an array of guns, revolvers, small revolvers, J-frames or Colt, detective special stuff like that, to, Smith semi-autos and Glocks and all the other stuff, I was like, I think you'd probably carry a 1911 because it's skinny. And if you remember at the time, like this is in the 90s, this is the crime bill, right? So there was only 10-round magazines. If you went and bought a Glock 19, for example, you got a 10-round magazine with the gun. It wasn't a 15. And I think a lot of people did sort of the same calculus that I did, which was I'd rather have a gun that was a little bit slimmer to carry and held 8 big bullets than a gun that was maybe a little bit fatter to carry and not, maybe similarly sized depending on the platform, that only held 10. So I went down the 1911 route. And the first time I put one on, I was like, wow, this gun is really easy to carry. And that was it for me. At that point in time, I recognized that how easy the gun was for me to tote around. And that led me down the path of, okay, so I got this Colt. Well, what's better? Bought a Kimber. And then I bought another Kimber. And those guns shot great and they were easy to carry. And then a Kimber led me to, what's better than a Kimber? Well, let me go get a Wilson Combat. So I got a Wilson Combat, and by this time we're kind of into the late 90s, where the semi-custom industry, certainly not what it is today, but Wilson had come out with the 1996 A2, which turned into their sort of their named models, Protector, right, and the CQB, which was super popular. I got one of those and I thought, oh man, this gun is so cool. And that was sort of an explosion for me. If this was good, if I had a Colt and it was good and I liked it, and then I had a Kimber and it was good and I liked it, and then a better was a Wilson and it was good and I liked it, what is better than that? So that then I just dove in head first, man. I couldn't get enough of it.
So we're the same age basically. And in those years you're talking about, I mean, I guess the internet exists, but it's not certainly not
Yeah.
what it is today.
Yeah.
What was your source of information as you're going down this path?
American Handgunner magazine and Combat Handguns, when Harris Publications was still a thing, and a lot of people who go to the internet now to get information, they're able to just go and source everything they need. So if you just type in, what's a good 1911, you can start getting things broken down by price. Whereas, in that time, the late 90s, kind of early-ish 2000s, you bought gun magazines and you read them cover to cover,
Mm-hmm.
because you never knew what nuggets you were going to find in there. And
Right.
so American Handgunner magazine has had a long tradition of really sort of putting forward the custom 1911. And you'd see these guns on the cover that were like, I remember the gun that really influenced me the most was a Paul Liebenberg gun.
Okay.
That was on the cover of Handgunner in, I think, 99 or 2000. That was the first custom gun I ever remember looking at and going, wow, I wonder what it took to build that.
Right.
I wonder what that guy, what he had to learn and what he had to achieve in order to make this thing that I was just awestruck by. So you'd get information there, and forums were kind of becoming a thing then. I mean,
Right.
they were, but they didn't explode like they were now. I mean, the information superhighway, right?
Right.
What we have now, it's so easy to find info on the platform or the guns or holsters or whatever it is. But back then, I would just buy every gun magazine that I could. Every month you go to the bookstore and you just buy them or
Right.
subscribe to them, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, and those were the Cameron Hopkins days of American
Yeah,
Handgunner, and of course
for
a
sure.
huge 1911 lover, huge custom 1911 lover. So that was
Yeah.
probably his labor of love. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah, for sure. For
so how
sure.
do you go from? I mean, at some point, do you start tinkering with these guns?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay, what
You
kind of
know.
things were you doing that you're probably horrified
Um
at now that?
oh yeah. Like I remember the first time I tried to take a thumb safety out of the frame, and I couldn't figure out that you have to put it halfway between on and off, kind of wiggle it around and pull it right out of the frame, and it comes out. And I'm like, well, you do you push on the back side of the pin, or how do you get this thing out? So the first thing was like, I need to take this gun apart. I gotta see how it works.
Right.
So I took it apart, muddled my way through taking it apart, in fairness. I mean, really muddled my way. But there was that, and then it was like, well, I want to fit a thumb safety. So I fit a thumb safety. And then you could buy ignition kits like you can now still. I
Hmm.
bought one of those and dropped it in. I didn't know what I was doing. No stones, no fixtures, no
Sure.
tooling to speak of, right? Do a trigger job. And then, well, I wonder if I could replace the rear sight. Well, it can't be that hard. Undo the screw, drive the sight out, put a new sight in. Well, I wonder if I could fit a beaver tail. Well, it can't be that hard. And like I look back at early photos of those guns, and I'm a bit horrified. I'm like, man, but you don't know what you don't know, and you
That's
have
right.
to get experience somewhere. I mean,
You
you
got to start
have
somewhere.
to, yeah, and you got to fail. You have to be willing to accept failure. So as I started tinkering with the guns, I had friends of mine who I shot with, things like that, who would say, "Hey, man, that looks pretty good. Would you fit a thumb safety to my gun?" "Oh, sure, I will." You buy the part, I'll do it for free, and if I mess anything up, I'll cover the cost, right? So I had friends that trusted me to do that, and that led to one thing to another. And at this time too, I'm starting to discover custom 1911s, and I'm starting to buy them because I want to see how these other guys do their work. Like my first custom 1911 was a Swenson gun. I
Oh
bought it
wow.
off Gunbroker in the early 2000s. I think it was 01-ish. And, I knew who he was. And I was like, I just got to see how he did it. How did, what was his methodology? What was his ideology? So tinkering was the first thing for sure.
So how do you
Poorly,
make that
poorly
move
done.
from tinker to, hey, I'm going to do this for a living?
So I owned my own business in Washington, which was great. It allowed me a bunch of free time to do two things. One, I could shoot whenever I really wanted to. And owning my business allowed me to tinker with guns in the back room. So, as I started to play around more, I realized, well, I got to finish these guns. So I bought a blasting cabinet. So that was kind of my introduction into finishing, not knowing anything, right? And then I got an opportunity to move to Arizona in 2005. So I've messed around with these guns now for the past 6-ish years. Okay. And in 2005, I got an opportunity to move to Arizona. I sold my business in Washington. I was 29 years old at the time. And I thought, well, if I'm ever going to do it, this is it. If I really want to do this thing that is interesting to me, I mean, I have at least a mild passion about it at the time. This is my jump off point. Any later, it'll be too late. This is the perfect opportunity. So I did it. I sold the business. I moved to Arizona, and like the ball just started rolling, which is awesome.
And you didn't go to school. You don't have formal training per se, right?
No,
Taught
no.
yourself how to
In fact,
weld.
yeah. Well, and in fairness, with help from people, like I certainly have had people my entire career being willing to give me information, right? And I think that's one of the great things about the gunsmithing trade. Most of the really great guys want to tell you how to do things. They want to pass on information to you. And when I moved to Arizona, no machining background at all. I'd never run a mill or a lathe. I was fortunate to have somebody who taught me, hey, this is how you do things. This is how we fixture to cut a rear sight. So I learned how to machine around gunsmithing. But
Mhm.
when you do it enough with anything, you start to be able to apply the things you've learned in your trade around other things. So I always tell people that I machine like a barbarian, that I'm not a classically trained machinist. Okay. But yeah, I can machine things and I can look at a print and I can kind of understand what's going on, especially, I mean, the print 1911, obviously, but prints in general. I can see how they communicate ideas behind machining, but I don't have any formal training. I don't have any formal training in much of anything,
Right.
honestly. I went to driving school when I was 15. That's about
Okay,
it,
that's good.
Yeah.
Well, it seems to be working out. Yeah,
Yeah.
one of the things
Yeah.
I kind of learned is, and you know, I'm at the very muddling stage, but I learned how to do things on guns. Okay, you can do that thing, but was when I
Mhm.
had to start making my own fixtures that I really learned more about actual machining, right? Because now you're starting from a block of aluminum or whatever, and it's a
Yeah.
totally different concept.
Yep.
Who were
For sure.
your early influence in terms of style? Like what are the guns you wanted to emulate?
The very first gun I wanted to emulate was the Paul Liebberg gun that was on the cover of American Handgunner. It was 99 or 2000, somewhere in that neighborhood. It was built on a 68 slant groove Colt commercial, which is an important gun as far as I'm concerned, very rare
Mhm.
base gun. He had left Smith and Wesson. He had opened up Pistol Dynamics. I saw that gun, and it had a big impact on me right away. Although I didn't recognize the impact it had until years and years later, when I started to look at how I wanted to emulate things that he was doing, sort of subconsciously. Um, at the time, other guys' work who I was really looking up to, Mark Morris, Richard Heine, stylistically, I liked the way those guys' guns looked.
Mhm.
Especially Richard Heine. I always liked the way Heine's guns looked. They were super clean. Um,
Yeah, very
Mark Morris,
classic.
yeah, for sure,
Yeah,
for
which is
sure.
very much your look.
Yeah, and I like the classic thing. I think that there's a lot of good guys doing avant-garde work.
Mhm.
Ned Christensen as an example. He very much, I think, would come from the school of Jim Boland a little bit more, right? Where you've
Mhm.
got this very out of the box thinking going on. I always liked the traditional aspect of the 1911. So if it had that traditional look, I was very much into it. Certainly, my former business partner Ted Yost was obviously an influence on me. We worked together for 10 years, and so from a stylistic perspective, I would say that there's a lot of roots there. I mean,
Hmm.
you can't help but have that rub on. We worked literally back to back for 10 years, Um, but some of the older makers too, stylistic cues from Hogue or from Swenson. I think the Packmeyer Combat Special was tremendously important. And when I do a two-tone gun, I think every one of them, even if it's not configured like a combat special, is sort of a little bit of a tribute to the combat special because it was the first kind of two-tone
Absolutely.
gun. You know, but I think I've always tried to take a little bit of something from everybody, not in the sense of take it and apply it, but absorb it.
Hmm.
And even though people would look at my guns and polished blue and ivory and classically styled, and that is definitely my thing, I've looked at enough of people's details to try to apply the things I thought that were important. And look, I was fortunate too, in the sense that when I moved to Arizona, I had over 20 custom 1911s in my own collection. So I got to look at a lot of people's work and I got to look at it in depth. And I think that the list of people that influenced me, even if it's just small, like small way, is very long. Tim Bryan, Pete Single, Stan Chen. I mean, obviously Ned, because I would look at the way they would do things, not necessarily stylistically as it applies to me, but just oh, that's cool. Look how he did that to the barrel, or oh, I see why you did that to the bushing or the slides. Pick apart.
Hmm.
And if I can borrow some of that, then I've always tried to apply it to my guns.
Yeah, and Pete seems from the technical side, the like you might call it the engineering side. He's like the godfather that nobody's ever heard of in the
Yeah,
public. Every gun maker knows about Pete Single and has probably learned something from him.
yeah.
A casual reader might not understand how important he is to the 1911 trade.
Oh, hugely important. In fact, I mean, I have to give Pete a tremendous amount of credit for, 10 or 11 years ago now, he got me to completely rethink the way I was fitting barrels. And it was just casual conversations about like, hey, are you doing this to your barrels when you fit them? And I said, well, tell me about that, Pete. And he would elaborate, and then it would open my mind up even more. And when I decided that I was going to learn how to weld, right? I mean, I've been doing weld up frame and slide fits now for a long time, but I had farmed out my welding. But about 5 or 6 years ago, I said, like I'm going to learn how to weld somewhere in that neighborhood. 5 years ago, I think. And so, Pete was a guy who gave me lots of like, hey, here's a tip for you. This is what I do when I do this. This is how I weld this part. Something to look out for. Here's a little thing to watch out for when you do this. Um, Pete's got just a tremendous depth of knowledge for a couple of reasons. He has a very engineering brain, as you alluded
Hmm.
to. It's very problem solving oriented. He sees how mechanical things work, and he has an innate ability to understand them a lot better than most people. Okay. And he's seen enough guns because he's been kind of the guy who a lot of people who can't do lean on I
Hmm.
mean, and I don't mean that disparagingly. But I mean, a lot of guys don't want to checker, for instance. And
Right.
if there's a guy who is the godfather of machine cut checkering, it
It's
is
Pete.
Pete Single,
Hmm.
without a doubt. I mean, he didn't invent checkering and he didn't invent machining, but he put those two things together, and it
Hmm.
has been hugely beneficial to the industry.
And I think he
Um,
invented 25 line per inch checkering, correct? Because he
I,
figured out how
I
to
think
do it
he was the
mechanically.
first guy to ever do it.
Yeah.
To apply it to the platform, I should
Right.
say. In the middle '90s, when he was still checkering on a rotary table. Before he bought CNCs. We had a
Right.
rotary table on his Bridgeport, and there he was, right? So I think Pete deserves a tremendous amount of credit for um, being able to absorb and pass on knowledge in a useful manner to people,
And incredibly generous with that information.
for sure,
Yeah. Yeah.
for sure.
So
Yeah,
as you're kind of getting up and running, how do you build that business? How do you say, "Hey, I know you've never heard of me, but I'm gonna
yeah,
send me some money
yeah,
and a gun, and I'm gonna build it for you."
yeah. Well, and again, look, I had a leg up. I was in a very enviable and fortunate position. I got to walk into an established shop when I got hired. So
Mhm.
Ted Yost essentially offered me a job and said, "Hey, if you come to Arizona, you manage his previous business that he had, okay, and at the same time, you can learn how to build guns. So when you're not busy running the front end of the business, you can learn how to build guns." And So I worked for that company until it dissolved, and then
Mhm.
we started Heirloom Precision together in 2007. So I kind of walked into a place that was already in demand, and at that point in time, that's a lot of like clearing the deck, right? You go, okay,
Sure.
look, here you go. You got this. Here's an opportunity. Now you got to make the most of it. Um, so, you know, I wasn't starting from zero. In fairness, I mean,
Okay.
I wasn't. I had an opportunity. I grabbed it, right? But where do you go from there? For me, I've always had one goal, and it is that I don't want to do anything but my best. I'm not interested in anything but doing my best in anything that I do. So my wife often jokes about how I don't have any hobbies, because if any hobby absorbs my entire life, like that's it.
Right.
Like if I was
You
going
don't
to be
go a
into
little
race
bit into
cars,
anything.
no, nothing.
Yeah.
So I only do a few things. I mean, I really like, people are always like, well, what's your hobby? You work with guns. I'm like, no, guns are my hobby. And they're like,
Right.
yeah, but what do you do in your downtime? I shoot guns. Yeah, but
Right.
okay, when you're not doing that, I play with guns. And when you're not doing that, well, then I just go shoot them. That's it. All I do is
Right.
guns.
Sleep.
I don't do
Yeah.
anything but guns.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that for me, part of it was just absolute dedication. I only wanted to do this one thing. I thought to myself when I moved here in '05, I thought, well, if I fail at it, I'm young enough that I can go find something else to do. I'll go, like I'll go work for the sheriff's office or something. I'll find something to do. But I had no intention of failing. And so I think part of it is that all I have ever wanted to do was build. That's it. So anything I could do that helped me build, I'm willing to do.
How long do you feel like it took you, and I know in hindsight, probably this this needle moves, right, as you look back on
Mhm.
your work, but until you felt like you were turning out things that you were satisfied gun-wise, like,
I'm not there yet.
okay, all right, fair,
Yeah.
fair point.
I say that a little bit tongue in cheek, right? Okay.
Sure.
It's a little bit tongue in cheek because obviously, one, I would never send anything out that I wasn't happy with. But the biggest problem with me is that I can look at anything in my life and go, that could be better. That could be better. If I just did that a little bit different, I could do it better. And I have a joke. I'm gonna tell it here, right? It's my little joke I tell everybody, which is that my biggest regret in business is all the guns I built 10 years ago. And I've been saying that for 10 years.
Right.
Okay. Because I recognize that as I look at the pistols that I'm building now, they're so vastly different than the guns I built in 2005, 6,
Mhm.
7, 8, 9, 10. Because I've been able to have people be positive influences on my life and my work. And I've been able to have whatever benefits they have kind of rub off on me. I've invented nothing. Everything I've ever done is an adaptation of somebody else's idea. So, how long did it take me? I'm still working at it. I just want them
Right.
to be better. Yeah.
Great anecdote. Tell us about the 3 barrels that you fit to one handgun. This is a pretty good example of how you're not gonna let something leave the shop that's
Yeah.
not perfect. On
Okay.
a gun that's
So,
probably never been shot other than by you, by the way. We'll throw that out
yeah,
there.
so my very obsessive nature, I was building a gun where the client gave me un just said, do your best. You have unlimited time. You can take as long as you want. I don't care. I simply want your best effort. Okay. And the gun itself was a rare base gun, right? A pre-war 38 Super. And it was a little bit worse for wear when I got it, I
Coolest
wouldn't.
slide markings of any 1911, in my opinion, by the way,
Oh
just throwing
yeah,
that out there.
super cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so I got this base gun that's certainly not perfect, and there's a lot of cosmetic cleanup, and there's of course a process in terms of a timeline with which I tackle every project. So I do this, then this, and there's a little bit of I can move some things around, but there is an order of process for me when I'm building a gun. So got things cosmetically cleaned up, got the frame and slide fit. Now I'm tackling the barrel fit. It's going to get a ramped barrel, a cart barrel, okay, in 38 Super. And one of the things that I do is to time the radial lugs on the barrel. Okay. So as I'm starting to measure out this barrel, I'm realizing, oh my God. Like, and I've already cut some on the barrel. Like, I've already made a few modifications to the barrel just as sort of a preamble to what I'm going to do. And I'm like, oh, this barrel is never going to headspace correctly. I don't have a long enough barrel extension in order to move the lugs to where I want them to be. I don't have enough chamber left in order to cut the headspace to put it where I would like it to be and have the barrel fit the way I want it to be. So there's barrel number one. And I'm like, okay, set that barrel aside. Maybe I can use it on another gun because I've not really done a lot of cutting, but here's a barrel I've got now that has a short chamber, 38 Super, right? So, I have a quantity of barrels in stock, so I'll just go grab another one. I'm going to start over. And this one is short chambered by 20 thou. Okay. All right. I get this one fit. It's wonderful. I'm thrilled with the fit. I go and shoot the gun. The gun shoots great. I mean, the gun shot amazing. I'm thrilled with how the gun shoots. And I collect all my brass, and I probably shot 150 rounds through the gun during this range session. I bring it back, and I'm starting to detail other things out. I'm looking at the brass, and I'm like, wow, that brass looks like it's out of round. I pick up another piece of brass. I'm like, well, this one looks like it's out of round too. Not bulged from like overpressure, but that the brass was no longer concentric to itself. So I start measuring, and I'm like, well, these are out of round. So I start measuring the chamber, and I realize through some mistake of my own completely, when I reamed the chamber, it's not concentric to the center of the bore. Don't ask me how it happened because I don't have a clue. Okay. I just know that I did it. Okay.
Right.
But the gun shoots wonderfully. Well, there's no headspace problems, there's no pressure problems, and there's no accuracy problems. But one day, this client might pick up his brass and decide he's going to reload it and set the sizing die down on it and go, wait a minute, why can't I slip this die over the top of this piece of brass? I could never send that out. So this perfectly fit barrel gets set aside, go grab another barrel out of the pile and fit the third barrel. And, in fairness, I only charge for one. I mean, the mistakes were mine. I buy the mistakes. Clients don't buy the mistakes. They just buy the finished product, right? So I fit a third barrel and went out and shot it. Shoots great. I did the chambering correctly this time. And the client ended up getting both barrels, though. I sent him both barrels because they both shoot fine. I was like, hey, this one's perfect. This one I'm not happy with, but if you ever feel like you want to shoot a bunch of frangible ammo, like non-toxic lead-free, because it's hard on barrels, this is your junker barrel. So
yeah, just in case you're going to do that with your pre-war 38 Super, right?
Right. Yeah. But that is a good example of my very obsessive nature.
And how margins can shrink very quickly on a custom gun when you're dedicated to doing things correctly.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
You talked a little bit about this. Let's go into a little more. So base guns. What do you like for base guns? You're using mainly Colts, correct?
Yeah, mostly what the clients send to me, right? Colts or Springfields. I like a blank canvas. So like the Springfield TRP, which I think is a great gun. It doesn't really make a great base gun for what I do because it's already got dovetails. It's already got checkering, and there's some detail elements that I can't change. So when a client asks to send a project in, we talk about the base gun. My big thing is we got to choose a base gun that is, one, it's right for the project, okay? And two, allows me a blank enough canvas to do the work that the people see on the website. Because that's a lot of what they're coming to me for, that visual aspect. They're coming to me because they saw something on the website that they're like, oh man, that's my dream gun, or that's what I want. And I need to be able to reproduce that for them. So a blank enough canvas, which a Colt, a Series 70 government model, or a Colt commercial, or a Springfield mil spec, or a GI, those guns provide blank canvases. Yeah.
How often do you have to reject a gun?
Modern guns, not that often. Like the current crop of Colt stuff, the Colt Classic, I think the SKU is like 01911C. Those guns are wonderful. They're machined wonderfully. They're heat treated correctly. They've got great steel, and they do present that blank canvas approach to allow me to do it. Older guns, especially from the 70s, can really be hit or miss, but I would say they're generally not hit or miss dimensionally. They're hit or miss with regards to cosmetic elements that I would require to be fixed during the build, and then simply just don't make dollar sense. Okay. So I'll give you a great example. If a guy says, hey, I want a Packmeyer Combat Special Tribute. In my mind, we build that gun on a large letter Series 70 because that's the era that gun is right for, okay? But you might take a couple to get the right one in because, well, that one's got a slide that's got a little bit of chamfer on the radial locking lugs, or the roll marks on that one are really bad, but they're not bad on that one, but the cocking serrations are bad on that, or it's been over polished, or it's got this wonky line in the trigger guard, so I can't square and checker the trigger guard the way I would want to. So a lot of evaluating the base gun comes down to knowing the project that the client wants and making sure that the base gun is applicable to the project.
You ever
So I might reject.
take a slide from this one and a frame from this one?
If the client is okay with it, I will.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
But there's a dimension there too also at play, right? Like, and again, here, things I didn't know 20 years ago, right? The height of the slide on the frame is tremendously important in the manner in which I build guns. And there is a number range that is applicable for that. So not every slide can be then put on a frame, because it might not allow for me to fit the frame and slide to that total number that I like. So then it might be possible cosmetically, and it might be advantageous from a build perspective in terms of time and cosmetics, but then I go, yeah, except the number will never be right. So I'd rather start with the gun that might require more cosmetic work, but the numbers can end up correct versus vice versa.
So why not, in this day and age where you can buy a dimensionally correct, clean canvas, why not start with a gem base gun or something like that?
And I would start off by saying there's nothing wrong with that. There are lots of guys that do it, and they do it to a very high level, and they produce a phenomenal product. But that's not what's in my heart. Nobody, I'm in a great position. I don't build things people need. I just build things people want. And at the end of the day, I want the body of my work to be represented in the truest sense of the custom 1911 industry, which is we took a product that already existed and we made it better. It doesn't mean, again, like that those guys are doing things wrong. A lot of guys get frames from Gem with their name on them, and they're good frames. I mean, I can't begrudge them their business model, but I want to build. I just want to build dreams. I'm
right.
And
it's what you do.
For me, part of it is the challenge too.
And you're enough
it's
of
harder to
a.
build on a cold.
You're enough of. I mean, it takes a real gun nut to say, "Hey, I got this pre-war 38 Super. And I want it to look like X, and I'm going to send it to this guy in Arizona, and I'm going to wait, and I'm going to spend all this money." But you get it, and the client gets it, and there's that marriage of like, no, we understand why this has to be on this gun that has a soul, right?
Yep.
Yep. And so that's a good. The great news is there are customers out there who want that and are willing to pay for it, and there's someone like you that's actually willing to build it. That's the perfect. Yep. And there probably aren't 10,000 customers like that, and you don't have 10,000 gun builds in your life, so that's gonna work out great. I first became aware of you and your work through Larry Vickers. How did you link up with Larry? And I know you've built a lot of guns for him over the years. What's that?
Yeah.
How did that start?
Yeah. So I met Larry for the first time, I guess, in depth at a class. He was coming to Arizona to teach a pistol class. A buddy of mine was hosting it. This is probably 08-ish. So I was like, yeah, I'll go take the pistol class. And Larry is a larger than life personality. I mean, Larry is a unique individual, no doubt about it. And I was a little bit like, I don't really know how to take Larry when I meet him the first time. Hey, bro. Larry gives you the hey, bro thing. We shot together for 3 days, and he said at the end of the class, he says, I'm gonna have you build me a gun. I'm gonna send you a gun. I said, oh, that'd be awesome. Like I'd love to. So he sent me a pre-war national match.
My favorite,
45.
Probably my favorite gun of yours of all time, by the way. I was going to bring that gun up.
And it wasn't like horribly beat up or anything like that. It had been reblued. It didn't have all the original parts. So a lot of guys go, oh my God, you cut up a pre-war national match. Yes, I did. And I would do it again, honestly. I'm okay with it. But it wasn't a perfect base gun. It wasn't a tremendous collector value pre-war national match. And he wanted a classically styled gun that was really similar to another pistol I had built. So he'd already had an idea what he wanted. There was some serious cosmetic hurdles in that gun. It had one of those micro adjustable rears that the slide had been threaded for the windage adjustment screw. So fixing that was pretty interesting in order to be able to cut the sights I wanted into it. But it was also one of those very important guns I think in the body of my work, because it's like a dream gun. It still looks like the thing I want it to look like. People
Hmm.
immediately recognize it's a special base gun, and it's one of those things you build just to have it exist. And I think that was probably the very first project that I ever did to build for no other reason than to have it exist.
And that was when the first Vickers guide came out, the original
Yeah.
1911 book, not the one that
Yep.
you helped work on. That gun was
Yep.
in there. I said, I want that gun, but I want it in a 38 Super,
Yeah.
super match or whatever
Yep.
the pre-war
Super
version
match.
was.
That's right.
So
Yep.
still waiting on you, still waiting on them. But that, I mean, that to me, that was one of those guns, like when you saw that Liebenberg, maybe, that I was like, wow, this is different.
Yeah.
And I had already met you long before that, but
Yep.
I guess I hadn't seen
Yeah.
that thing that lit a spark. Um, and to me, that's just a great example. I was thinking about this yesterday. I was thinking about your style, and um, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but to me, your style takes John Browning's masterpiece and then takes it to its most refined level, but without breaking the sort of lines of the gun. Right? You're not
Yeah.
doing no disrespect for the guys who do it. You're not doing golf ball treatments on the front strap.
Hmm.
I mean, you're kind of sticking to the theme and the style and the soul of the gun, but taking it to mastering those basic lines and things like that. Is that fair?
Yes. 100% classic Americana. I mean,
Right.
that's really, um, you know, and I tried to incorporate other things stylistically they've in the past, and they haven't felt right. And I don't mean that. And again, that's not disparaging or disrespectful to the other people who do it. For example, again, we'll bring up Ned Christensen. I mean, very avant-garde style, and he pulls it off extremely well. Chuck Rogers, who's
Hmm.
a phenomenal gunsmith and a phenomenal machinist, and he has a style that is uniquely Chuck. So much
You can
so
look
that a
at the
lot of
gun
people
across
have
the room.
decided to oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and so much so that many other people have decided to adopt Chuck's style.
Sure. Yeah.
Whether or not that child needed adoption or not, they decided
Right.
to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
But
to me is interesting. Always interesting when big production companies take
yeah,
the style of a Ned Christensen
yeah,
frag pattern on a production gun, essentially.
yeah,
That's, to
yeah.
me, I'm sure on one hand maybe frustrating for the maker, on the other probably flattering. So
And I would always look at it like flattery. I mean, like if it was
right.
me, that's the way I would take it. In part because I also recognize that if pick a gun company, if they decided that they were going to build an absolute total reproduction of that gun that's sitting in that picture right there, right
Hmm.
above my head, right? They were going to build, well, that's not going to affect my business at all.
No.
No one's going to stop wanting me to do that for them, and I
Right.
recognize that's no big deal. They might help promote that thing for me. I don't know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so it's never really, that's not a thing that bothers me. Um, but there is that from a stylistic standpoint. I've always tried to just simply be classic, clean. I like bluing still. I
Hmm.
love two-tone guns, obviously. If I could blue every gun for the rest of my life, that's it. In fact, if I could just build one gun, one style of what I've
This is
done,
the Burton.
yeah, it'd be the gun that's in that picture above me, which is, straight up 45 ACP, 30 lines checkering, niter blued pins and screws. It's got, all the cosmetic touches I want it to have. It'll never be out of style. It looks as good in a display box as it does in a holster.
Hmm.
Um, you know, that would be the thing I would want to do because, again, it's the thing that influenced me early on, the classically styled guns, clean lines, and not, I was never into race guns, although I have a tremendous appreciation for what it takes to do them.
Hmm.
But what the things that moved me were things that, like that Paul Liebenberg gun early on.
What do you think, you're from a technical standpoint? What has been your most ambitious project? Like what's the one you really had to sit back and figure out how I'm going to do this?
Um,
And I guess since you've been, not at the beginning when
yeah,
everything was, how am I going to do this,
right.
right? But
Everything was hard then, right? Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. Well, that pre-war 38 Super was a challenge on so many levels. Just the base gun was a challenge in many aspects, both dimensionally and cosmetically. Getting the trigger guard right, because I cut it off and welded it part in, and then I checkered both faces of the trigger guard, and I decided I was going to checker them at 75 lines to the inch, and I hand checker everything. So
Hmm.
when you sit down after you've already welded the guard in, and you've already basically shaped it and you know it. And then you go, okay, now I'm going to checker this part. Oh, and then I'm going to checker the other side too. It's a gut check on top of a gut check on top of a gut check, right? So it was very technically challenging for me. The first gun I ever did with a squared and checkered trigger guard was also one of those things that when I sat down to do it, I really made a plan, and I had a really good influence that helped me figure out how to do a squared and checkered trigger guard, which is a guy who's never done one in his life but knows what they're supposed to look like. Rob Latham literally was like, no, here's what a guard needs to look like, and here's how you're going to do it. And I was like, oh, all right, probably know a thing or three. I think I'll listen to you.
And we'll get to Rob.
Oh yeah. Can't not get to Rob.
Can't not get to Rob.
But that was definitely it. I think that the first time I ever was going to weld up a frame for the first time, there's like when I wanted to weld, I bought a machine. I actually bought a couple of machines. Okay. At first I thought I was going to use a micro TIG machine, and I bought a micro TIG, and that didn't really work the way I wanted it to. So I have a real TIG machine as well. And that's what I use to weld everything. I mean, it's conventional TIG. And I practiced forever, for well over a year, just practicing welding before I was going to get brave enough to actually weld the frame rails on a frame. And that was probably another one of those projects. The project itself overall wasn't hard in its totality, but I think that, like I alluded to with those other guns, it's not that the projects themselves are hard in their totality. It's that each individual aspect can be difficult, and then combining them, or you've got an individual aspect, which is either going to make or break the gun. So that last example of welding, when I sat down at my welding table and I was like, well, it's now or never. I mean, I either got to jump in the pool or decide not to swim, one or the other. And I was like, well, I'm going to jump right in. And I did it, so
what's the average number of hours that you've got in a gun?
170, and then many guns are more. Many guns are more. Yeah.
North
the
of
last
250,
gun I just delivered. Say that again.
North of 250, some of them, right?
Oh, I've definitely had many guns that are over 200 hours for certain. Okay. And I don't know that I've ever gotten. I think I probably only ever had one that approaches that 250 hour mark. And again, a complicated gun. When you start layering things on guns, right? If you get a guy who says, build me a straight up 45 ACP government model, it's a fairly straightforward build. But if the client says, I want anything with a ramped barrel, takes more time because there's more machining in fitting the barrel. Okay. Anything with a magwell takes more time. So if you get a guy who says, I want a magwell where you cut the bottom of the frame off and add the magwell, and I want a buried Bomar and a squared and checkered trigger guard on a 9mm with an ambi safety, and it's going to be an old 9mm that's going to need some cosmetic cleanup, that becomes just tons
one
of
thing
hours
after another.
To do those.
Yeah. Now you've done you're obviously known for 1911s, but you've built some other guns. You've built some P35s.
Yeah.
You've done at least one of the new 210s.
Yes. Yeah.
I guess, what's that like? What's that transition like when you go from this platform that you know so very well to the point that you're teaching it, right? To you jump into a different base gun?
Fun and challenging at the same time. Like the high power is because I'd done enough of them in the past as well, where that's kind of like I'm just picking up where I left off. I don't do them nearly in the volume that I do 1911s. Okay.
Right.
So a lot of times it's a good mental break sometimes. And I don't ever really need a mental break from 1911 stuff. I mean, like I said, my job is my hobby is my job kind of thing, right? But sometimes working on a high power is so different, and the challenges are so different that it's like, okay, this is it's a mental break because it's different challenges, not because I need a break from another thing. The 210, however, was like cutting a whole new road. I didn't really, of course, I'd been inside the guns before. And that was another, a buddy got the gun and was like, hey, you should look at this gun. This is a really cool gun. I'm like, wow, this is a really neat gun. And he's like, I bet you could cut a hiney into the rear of that. I was like, I think I could put a hiney rear sight into the rear of that. Okay, you should do that, kind of thing. It was another one of those. And then it became, well, let me do this, let me do that, and all that. So that was discovering a whole nother platform. And it was fun to do because, again, I like being challenged. So part of it was new platform, new challenges, and new discovery. Yeah.
What was your, and of course that, that gun is I guess a redesign,
Mhm.
it's not a clone, it's a tribute effectively, right?
Yep.
With a lot of the
Yep.
design elements. When you get that thing apart and you start getting it, was there a lot of appreciation, man, they really did this right? Like what were your
Oh,
thoughts on?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Frame and slide fit phenomenal. And the way that the frame and the slide interface with each other establishes their relationship vertically, and then how the barrel interacts with that. There's no link on this one, right? It's
right.
got basically a sort of a cam track that the slide stop runs in, that guides the barrel's position, so that vertically it's in the right spot all the time. The arc of the barrel's travel is preset in there. Very smart way to do it. The barrel was fit tremendously well at the top end of the gun. So there were a lot of those elements that it was neat to discover, and to be able to look at it and go, oh yeah, like this is a really, really well thought out pistol. And the trigger mechanism itself is unique. It's just a very cool gun.
I've got a couple of those guns, and honestly, there's some of the just from a fit and finish, non-rattle, appreciate. There's some of the nicest factory guns, honestly, I've ever
Yep.
seen. I mean, those guns were a
Yep.
steal at the prices they were being sold
Oh,
at. Yeah.
tremendously good deal. And laser beam accurate.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So we touched on the Swinson. I mean, you've had a lot of you're a gun collector as well as other
Mhm.
things. You've had a lot of guns pass through your hands.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of Swinsons seems like, right?
Yeah, I've had a bunch of
What
Flintstones. Yeah, and I've
what
seen a bunch too. Yeah.
what are those guns like? What are your thoughts on them? And obviously, um, I've got one of his guns,
Mhm.
and it's there's of course, if you're not familiar with Armin Swinson, he's kind of the godfather in the custom 1911, right? He's one of the
Yep.
first guys that wasn't building bullseye guns, was building quote combat guns for practical
Yep.
use.
Yep.
And a lot of the things that we take for granted now are things he invented, the ambi safety and things like that. Um,
Mhm.
but you look at the guns now; they're rough. I mean, this is a guy in the '60s and whatever. It was a different
Yeah.
time, and things have come
Yeah.
a long way. But just, I guess, what are your thoughts on those guns, and what do you love about them? And
I love that they are. I love that they're the reason I'm here. First and foremost, that those guys cutting the path that they did, and allowing the custom 1911 to become a thing, although it was 100% pragmatic at the time. They were just practical pistols, and that's all they were meant for. I mean, and they were using guns for people. They weren't having guys like me build somewhat art pieces, which I'm
right,
totally fine with doing. Um, they were born out of necessity. They are rough when you compare them to even semi-custom guns today. You look at the
mhm,
quality of the product that are coming out of the big semi-custom shops, and which is phenomenal. Okay. They're rough, but they're very important because they tell the story of how we got to where we are, or at least how we started on the path to get to where we are, and how a guy like me, from some kid from Tacoma, Washington, can end up in Arizona working in a shop doing what he loves. So I think they're tremendously important, both historically and mechanically, because they were the first foray into, we're going to take this proven design and we're going to make it better and make it more applicable for people to use on a day-to-day basis.
what's your do you have sort of a grail gun in terms of as a collector, or do you
I
already have
I
it?
don't know if I, yeah, or maybe I already owned it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I'm a look. I am a Smith and Wesson revolver guy. So if you were to crack open my safes and look in them, you'd be like, you barely have any 1911s. What's up with all these round guns? I
Right.
love Smith and Wesson revolvers. I think they're just really cool guns. I think that I owned enough custom 1911s in the discovery of this industry that I don't know that I have a grail gun anymore. I really was able to own some neat guns, and of those guns, many of which have gone down the road, there are some guns I regret selling. And I think maybe those sort of fit kind of that mold, not necessarily
Hmm.
grail gun, but like, this was a cool gun I had and I wish I had it. I had a Nastoff comp gun that was one
Okay.
of the neatest guns I ever had. I'm just super cool gun. Checkered everywhere. I mean, like front, back, bottom, front of the trigger guard, back of the slide, the hammer was, I mean, checkered everywhere. Really great gun, with a very unique magwell on it. That was a that was a super cool gun to own, and I probably would have that one back if I had the opportunity. Um, but it's guns like that, I think, that fit the grail gun aspect for me. But I think some of those I've just already owned.
Yeah, and you could probably build what you want too. So that's like,
Yeah, if
yeah,
I had time, right? The
right,
cobbler's kid
right.
always goes
Yeah,
shoeless.
let's talk about that.
Yeah.
And you you're not a huge human,
Nope.
right? You are not Rob
Yeah.
Latham.
No, no,
Um,
no, no. We,
but
we look
you
like fat man and little boy standing next to each other.
right, and this is for
Yeah.
everybody out there who says a 1911 is too big and heavy or whatever.
Yeah.
You carry a full size 5-inch 1911 every day.
Every day.
Um, tell us about the gun you carry.
5-inch 45, obviously built on a Colt 70 series gun. It's a basic gun from a cosmetic standpoint. It's checkered, of course. It's got a modified Heine rear sight, a gold line front, cart barrel, little tiny thumb safety because I like little Colt commercial thumb safeties. I'm not a big extended thumb safety guy for me personally. Of course, it's got a beaver tail because I need to be comfortable to shoot. The thing that I think is most visually distinctive for it is it's finished in hard chrome. And that's kind of a basic toting gun. Of course, look, it's got all the inside stuff done to it. It's got a weld up frame and slide fit and all the other things that you would expect from a gun from my bench.
Right.
But 5-inch guns have always been easy for me to tote in an inside the pants holster. And I, even in the summertime in Arizona, when it's probably going to be 110 here today,
Right.
I
You're
still
carrying
walk
that gun.
around with a 5-inch gun in an IWB holster because it's just comfortable.
Yeah. So for all you 6'4", 250-pound guys out
Yeah.
there carrying pocket guns, be
Yeah.
more like Jason. And I'm not that big, but guess what? I'm not carrying around as a 5-inch 1911.
Yeah. Yeah. I tower at 5'5", just so you
That's
know.
right. Right.
Right. Yeah.
You are also an avid competitive shooter.
Yeah.
How'd you get into that?
Rob Latham.
Okay.
I mean,
How'd you meet Rob?
that was, oh man. How does one meet Rob? So, there's a million jokes I could have said right there. I just didn't do any of them. But Rob, I met Rob through Ted Yost. So Rob would come into the old shop, and I think Rob was the first new person I met when I moved to Arizona. So I've actually probably known Rob almost 20 years now. And really early on, he invited me to go shooting because Rob, yes, he's made a career out of shooting, but what people don't maybe realize about Rob is that he really, really loves every aspect of shooting. If he can shoot, he's going to do it. He loves shooting. So he said, "Hey man, you should come shoot. We're going to go shoot at this place. You should come shoot with us." All right. So I came and shot. I had no expectation of what it was going to be like. I knew who Rob Latham was because how could you not? But
Sure.
I had never seen anybody that was that good at that point in my life yet. And I really didn't kind of know what I was getting into in terms of going and shooting with him and just being tremendously humbled at his skill. But he's also the guy that wants you to do better. And he wants to talk to you about shooting. He wants to communicate ways that he can make you better. So
did that start right away? When you just go shoot with Rob casually, does he just start getting your tips right away, or?
Yeah, kind of. Hey, why are you doing that? That's more how it works with Rob.
Sure.
It always starts with a question, right?
Right.
He was like, or it starts with Rob being Rob in the sense of like, that'd be really cool if you were faster.
Right.
Or that would have been a really good score if you had done it quicker. Right.
Right.
It is things like that gets you. And then for people who are willing to embrace that and say, "Oh, okay, like, well, what do you mean by that?" He'll give you any piece of information that you want to have in terms of shooting. So
I just took a class,
1911
mastery course.
Yep.
Co-taught by Rob and Jason out in Arizona, 3-day class.
Yep.
If you truly love 1911s, want to learn how to shoot them better, want to learn how they work, that is absolutely a class. I cannot recommend it highly enough. It's a comedy show between these two guys. And I've, known Rob a little bit for a long time, interviewed him several times, stuff. But that's the first time I take that back. OSG Roundtable several years ago. Rob is there on behalf of Springfield, and he's there on the range demoing some new whatever XDM 10 millimeter, whatever. And I've got this gun, and here I'm going to shoot in front of Rob Latham. Like, this is it. I've been waiting for this moment my entire life. Shot probably the worst mag of my life. right? Just they're steel targets. I don't think I hit the thing once. And he just kind of looked at me and just shook his head, and I walked away, and there went that. So when this class came up, I'm like, I'm gonna redeem myself. I had a blast. There were great guys in the class. The instruction was phenomenal. I learned so much. And if the 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 great thing is, like, about 5 minutes in, you learn that this is unlike any other class you've ever taken. Rob is basically going to take everything you've ever read or learned about shooting and tell you it's wrong, and then demonstrate why. And one of my favorite anecdotes was, your opinion, multiply your opinion by how many world championships you've won, and we'll see if it matters. And he's got 8 or 9 or whatever the number is. Anybody else have any? Okay, well, then we're going to go with mine until somebody can. And then he demonstrates everything to a level that is just amazing. When he breaks it down, he says, I think it's shooting is simple, but it's hard, right? It's not complicated, but it's difficult.
Right.
And there's a lot of great one-liners and stuff, but tremendous instruction. And then Jason does an incredible job of breaking down how the gun works, what breaks, what doesn't, all that kind of stuff, which was a little bit of how we got to this conversation. I mean, you not only shot competitively, you've done it at a very high level. You won the IDPA Arizona State Championship, correct?
Yeah, for CDP division, which is 5-inch 45 God's gun division.
God's division.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Right. It was awesome. And, like, to start off with, I have to give a tremendous amount of credit for helping me do it to Rob, because he definitely changed my perspective on how to shoot the guns at the level that was going to allow me to get to that point. He was a little bit dismayed at the method by which I went about doing it, because, when I show up to the match and I'm not wearing a vest like everybody else, because that's just not how I shot the guns. I shot from underneath a t-shirt. I shot with real concealment, and I shot, full house 230 grain hardball, because I wanted to see whether or not I could actually accomplish the goal of doing it with that. Mm-hmm. Not smart from a competitive standpoint. I recognize that. And he told me, of course, right, in his very gentle Rob way, like, what are you doing? He's like, do you want to win or not? I'm like, well, yeah, I want to win, but I also kind of want to do it this way.
Well, the entire spirit of IDPA was supposed to be that, right? It was supposed to be this practical thing.
Right.
And so good on you for doing it.
Yeah. Now, in hindsight's 2020, right? I wouldn't do it that way again for a match at that level. I recognize that if you want to go to the match and you want to be competitive, like, there is a separation between the martial gun, that kind of thing, the carry gun type of thing, for the sake of actually practicing and carrying guns, and the competitive side of the arena. It's okay to have those things be two different yet similar things. And that was the thing I had to kind of get over to when I started shooting competitively, because I came from the personal defense. I'm carrying this gun as a tool of defense. When I got to Arizona, and it was eventually, again, it was Rob who basically said to me, well, one day you're going to come to me. He said this exactly. He goes, one day you're going to come to me, and you're actually going to want to learn how to shoot. And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? Like, I know how to shoot. He goes, yeah, you're fine. You're doing okay. He says, but one day you're going to actually want to know how to shoot. And I got what he meant as I got more into competitive shooting. I was like, I know what you mean by that. You can have it be a discipline that is right for one thing and right for another thing. And there is a lot of bleed over between the two. And it's okay,
those fundamentals are completely great. So 100%. I remember there's this long debate of, like you said, the martial versus the competitive, and all. At the end of the day, you can get lost in the minutia of that, but shooting is shooting. And a great shooter, I don't care who you are, you don't want to get in a gunfight with Rob Latham.
Nope.
Call him a gamer, call him whatever you want. Like, that would be a really, really bad idea. It would be over very quickly. And I don't really care who you are, right?
Yeah.
He has a thing in his class. He's a great sense of humor. Nothing is sacred. The only thing he has no sense of humor about is safety.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's something like, if you point a gun at me, we're in a gunfight, and it's going to end really quickly, or something like that is his line. And nobody's taking him up on that.
Yeah.
So let's go to, your average guy out there, probably not necessarily a customer of yours, probably not necessarily going to walk away from their career and become a gun maker, but somewhere in the middle, they love the 1911, they love the platform, they want to shoot it, they want to make it better. Maybe let's start with just production guns, and this is not
Mhm.
any, to, you know, not brand specific. Nobody's sponsoring this. What are the production guns that you like right now?
I
A
kind of break it into two.
non-exhaustive list, I guess.
Yeah, I break it into two categories, right? For in terms of a base gun, if somebody wanted me to build them a gun, it's pretty
Mhm.
easy. I recommend that send me a Colt. Okay. And it's not that there's anything wrong with other brands. It's that most of the time people are asking me to reproduce things that I've already done or to produce something for them that is similar to what I've already done. And the roll marks play a part in the cosmetic presentation of my work. So that becomes, let's pick the right base gun for the project. Okay. When people ask me, hey, I want to get into IDPA, for example, a guy says, I want to go shoot CDP division, you know, I'll ask them to define their price point a little bit, like what kind of money do you want to spend on this gun, and so on and so forth. But generally speaking, for that purpose, the Springfield TRP is a great gun. It's got all the stuff that you need on it to be able to go and shoot a match. It's got a magwell. It's checkered. If you're a lefty, it's got an ambi. I don't personally like ambis, but it's got one if you want one.
Right.
It's got sights that you can see, and it'll be accurate and reliable enough to allow you to go and be competitive, especially if you're just getting into the sport. So from those two perspectives, those are great choices.
What do you think if somebody's going to let's say that the TRP or a Garrison, something with a few fewer bells and whistles, but they want to
Mhm.
do some tweaks? What are some basic things um, that somebody without a ton of skill, without a milling machine, can do to improve that gun?
Fit a thumb safety. Okay. And I think that that's a very personal thing too for people. Again, I have my own personal likes when it comes to a thumb safety. I like a small Colt commercial style thumb safety. Most guys want an extended part, and it's a part that is cheap enough that if you ruin it, you're not ruining the rest of the gun, right? Even if you buy a machine from bar stock part like an EGW, which is a great part, right? You can learn how to fit the part and shape the part and make the part what you want it to be. That's a great place to start. Same thing with sights. Dawson Precision makes it really easy to buy the correct height front sight for the correct dovetail cut. And then you can learn how to take one sight out of the slide and install another sight, whether that involves filing on the dovetail and fitting it to the dovetail in the slide itself. You do get some experience and you're not really ruining the expensive part of the gun. Whereas for somebody just to dive in and decide they're going to fit a frame and slide, even if they're going to do it through peening and squeezing, right? Beating down the frame rails, squeezing the slide, you are modifying two extremely integral parts of the gun. And once you start modifying them, like there's no turning back. You're either going to finish or it's just going to get bad.
Better to cut on the aftermarket part than cut on the gun.
Yeah, especially when you're learning. And I say that
Right.
because those are the first things I did. I fit a thumb safety for the first thing, even though I struggled getting it out of the gun the first time, and had to buy a Kunhausen book, right? Like the shop manual, I was like, I gotta get this thing out. I better go buy a book.
No YouTube back
and
then.
sites. What's that?
No YouTube back
No
then.
YouTube back then? No. Yeah,
Right.
no YouTube back then. Yeah. But those are easy things. I think also fitting a beaver tail, if you try those first two things and you're like, hey, you know what? I got mechanical aptitude and I kind of understand cosmetics a little bit. Fitting a beaver tail is a pretty straightforward modification, but it definitely lets you then express how you want things to look artistically and cosmetically, because certainly more than fitting a sight, right? Which is really just knocking it into the dovetail.
Right.
Cutting a beaver tail, you got to shape it. It's got to look good to the eye. It's got to feel good to the hand. So there's many attributes at play there. Getting a firing pin stop is another one, because you're going to modify the firing pin stop versus the slide. So that allows people then to play with, well, how does this part mechanically interface with the other parts? And if you buy a firing pin stop that has like a flat bottom on it, like the EGW, it's not a true 90-degree edge. It's got a tiny radius, but it doesn't have the radius that is in the print, for example, that would come on like a GI 1911. You can then fit that to your slide and get the gun reassembled, go shoot the gun, and you can see if it made any perceptible change in the way the gun feels during recoil. And that's sort of a no risk modification. If you don't like it, or if you mess it up, you take that part out, throw it away, and start over.
Yeah, or put the original one back in.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
What do you think from you know, folks out there who are maybe more accustomed to a modern handgun? Like, if you grew up on a Glock, right, and I
Mhm.
hand you a 1911, there is a difference in average reliability, we'll call it. And we're not talking
Yeah,
about one of your
sure,
guns, but an off-the-shelf gun. There's
sure.
more that could go wrong.
Yeah,
It's a 100-plus-year-old design.
yeah.
What kind of goes wrong? What do you see in factory guns that may cause reliability issues, and what can be done to address it?
Two major things, one from an assembly standpoint and the other from a mechanics standpoint. From an assembly standpoint, I oftentimes see extractors that are simply not set up correctly, whether that's in terms of the way the extractor interfaces with the cartridge case, in terms of the physical geometry, or if it's just it doesn't have enough tension, or it's got too much tension, right? Because not enough tension, it'll feed everything, but it won't reliably extract or eject. Too much tension, it will probably extract and eject, but it probably won't feed. And a lot of those things can be remedied just by bending the extractor and either relieving tension or adding tension. And those are still things I see in production guns because, a lot of times people, when they buy a production level 1911, they'll refer to things like the barrel fit or the, fit of the frame and the slide. But the hard truth is that on a production level, those things are really not fit. The parts are pulled out of bins and the guns are assembled. The parts
Right.
are supposed to be made to a print with a plus and minus tolerance that allows them to go together over a wide swath of parts. So it really comes down to the success of the gun. It really comes down to how well was it assembled. Okay. From a mechanical standpoint, there are still guns I see that have feed ramps maybe that are less correct than others. That's my general way of putting it, right? Not the correct depth, maybe not the correct angle, or barrels that are not correctly spaced from the top of the feed ramp on the frame. There's other little things, guns that might not be sprung correctly, or guns that have heavy triggers or hard edges on them. And those things will, of course, impact the success a shooter may or may not have with the gun. But when it comes to pure reliability, the problems that I generally see in production 1911s are related to feed ramp geometry, so feed ramp barrel throat geometry, extractor installation, less so geometry, but generally installation, whether it's done correctly.
And the extractor, as you described it in your class, is the brain of the gun.
Yeah.
Right? I got that
Yeah.
right? I retained that
That's
information?
correct. Yep. The barrel's
And
the
so,
heart, the extractor's the brain. That's
so
correct.
for folks who want to go down this road, I highly recommend Jason has different classes, Thunder Ranch, the one he teaches with, it's one with Rob there too as well, right?
Yeah, we do a class. Rob and I do our comedy routine / shooting class
On the
right
road
after my
show.
19 class.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
if you really want to learn how these guns tick, go to Jason's website, heirloomprecision.com. You'll have classes on there. You have an email list folks can get on.
Correct.
That's how I got on the email list just like everybody else and said, hey, I want to do this class, and made it happen. Learned a lot, and I've been screwing with those things for 30 something years.
Yeah.
So that was fantastic. If you could go back to your former self, you're about to move to Arizona or whatever stage you want to go, what do you tell that person?
Do everything sooner. And what I mean is that, like, I wish I learned how to weld sooner. You know what I mean? I wish I had shot more sooner, especially that shot more sooner. And I was always heavily into shooting even when I was into Washington. I was shooting at one point in time. I was shooting over 1,000 rounds a month for 230 grain hardball when I was in Washington. Okay, but I would do more sooner because I see how doing it now has paid dividends later on. And that's not a regretful statement like, oh, I should have done this or anything like that. But I know the benefits I've gotten from opening myself up to trying this other new thing. Like, I go back to the welding thing a lot because it's a little bit of it plays in so much to what I do now. Okay, my ability to do it and correct issues. That was a big door that opened to me that I didn't even know was going to happen. And so I realized that if I had done it 5 years earlier than I did it, right? Well, God, where would I be now? If I'm doing it at this point now, if I had 5 more years of experience, what would my guns look like now? Or how could I better equip my guns now? So do everything sooner, and for like a guy who maybe wants to get into the trade, because I get asked sort of that question too, like, well, what, what would I recommend somebody do? I would recommend somebody shoot everything that they can through over every platform, not just 1911 wise. Even if they're like, I want to build custom 1911s, I'd say, great, go buy a Model 10 Smith & Wesson and shoot a whole bunch of rounds through that. Because you're going to learn something about the 1911 by firing other guns. Go shoot Glocks, go shoot SIGs, do all those things. Find somebody whose work you respect and be respectful of their time, but ask them questions. And, when I got into the industry 20 years ago now, right, I thought I had in my mind my own perception of what I wanted to do in terms of what I wanted my guns to look like, what I wanted them to be perceived as in terms of like, what is the role I'm trying to have my gun fulfill? And those things are totally different than they were 20 years ago. I had no aspirations to learn how to checker 20 years ago. I was like, no, I'm not going to learn how to checker. I'll just machine serrations on the front strap of my frame. And then the first gun I ever checkered, I was like, oh, I'm never not going to checker again. So I didn't know what I didn't know. And I recognized that a lot of that is having people be good influences on me has allowed me to shape my own future.
You got this worked out in your head, otherwise I wouldn't ask it. How many guns do you have left in you?
200 to 225. And I'm relatively young still. So a lot of people go, what are you, 80 years old? No. I build a very limited number of guns per year. I kind of know what that number is always going to be. And it's not because I'm not one of these, I don't have another job. Like a lot of guys get into this trade and they have another career. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that that's the reality.
Right.
Literally, this has been my job for 20 years. I do nothing else other than shoot in the occasional class, right? But I also know how much time I have in each gun. And if I have 20 more years of doing this work, I figure that I can build somewhere between 10 and 11 guns per year. And then that'll be it. Unless I get 25 years, which would be awesome.
Right. Yeah. Longevity is an evolving science. So who knows?
Yeah, that's what I keep getting told anyway. Yeah.
Right. Where can folks find you?
Heirloomprecision.com.
And you put a lot of your build process photos out on forums and social media and stuff like that. You're very open door with what you do.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
No secrets. But if you want to copy it, go ahead and try. Right. It's
been
20 years.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, and also too, like you can see, I have an Instagram page that I stay active on. I put in-process photos up, like you said there, and I put finished guns up and all that stuff. I always try to keep something out there for a couple of reasons. One, it's obviously good from a business promotional standpoint, but I also want to get people enthusiastic about the trade. Mm-hmm. I was very fortunate to have people take me into the fold 20 years ago and be willing to tell me things about how to do this work. And I hope at some point in time, as I recognize I'm 49 years old, right? So if I get to do this for 20 more years, there is going to come a point in time where I want to give this information away too. And so if I can inspire somebody else to be me 20 years ago, where like all I wanted to do was shoot 1911s, talk about 1911s, look at 1911s, hold 1911s, build 1911s. Like, I hope I find somebody like that I can kind of guide and give this knowledge to as well. And so I put pictures out of my work and stuff like that because maybe one day it inspires somebody else to do it.
Yeah,
no secret.
And I think it does.
No secret.
Yeah, just looking at it personally, it'll make okay. You know what? I need to go do some polishing or something. Like maybe in my little world, I need to go do some work on some 1911s. So Jason, thanks so much for joining us. HeirloomPrecision.com. Appreciate your time.
All right, buddy. Thank you.